Hello, Steve White, Trickway89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, we've got some sad news today. Robert Orci has passed away at only 51 years of age. Now, those of you who have come to Star Trek or New Trek through the Discovery era of propaganda and misinformation and revised history won't really know who Orci is. When they sort of developed this new Star Trek, which started with the J.J. Abrams films, Orci and Kurtzman were a team. And the idea was, Orci was the Star Trek guy. He knew Star Trek back to front. He was going to make sure that all the Star Trek elements were in place. And Kurtzman was brought on as the non-Star Trek fan, the Star Wars fan who hated Star Trek. And he admitted he hated Star Trek. He said it in the press at the time. And he was there as an example to all the non-Star Trek fans to say, look, there's someone in the writing team that's going to make sure this film is written for you, that we're not just going to create a really good, intelligent science fiction film that only Star Trek fans will appreciate. We're going to dumb it down and make it generic for the rest of you so everyone can enjoy it. He's the everyman. He's going to make sure that, non-Star Trek fans can enjoy the film. It's going to be for everyone. It's going to be a big, dumb action film that everyone can watch. That's what Kurtzman's role was. And Orci was the Star Trek guy. And that's all been revised now, and they're acting like Kurtzman always liked Star Trek and all that, and they have hidden all the interviews where he said he hated Star Trek, and all the stuff about the Prime Universe, how they had to create that because they couldn't use the original Star Trek, all that stuff they talked about back in the day, that's all been erased, and it's only people who were around at the time who actually remember these interviews that know all that happened, and the New Trek fans have been fed all this propaganda that none of that happened, and Orci disappeared during the making of Beyond. It's kind of sad. He was basically pushed out by Kurtzman and other people, and it was for two reasons apparently. And I've always wondered what happened here because it's sort of unclear what happened at the time. And I even did a video called, Whatever Happened to Robert Orci, because I didn't know where he went. Basically, the first Star Trek film went okay. It was like a get the gang together, and then at the end of the film they promised a bolt to go when no one's going for, and everyone got all excited. The second film came out and they just went back to Earth and did a terrorist plot, and although everyone showed up because they loved the first film, it was disappointing. People weren't happy. So they're on a bit of a PR tour where they're saying, no, it's okay, the next film is going to be really Star Trek, and Orci is writing it and he's going to direct it, and it's going to fix all the timeline issues, and it's going to be it's just going to fix all the issues with the J.J. Abrams universe, and it's going to be great. And they were promoting it that way for a while, and then things started to go south, where we were hearing that the studio didn't like the script. It was too Star Trek-y. And then Orci unfortunately went on trekmovie.com, as he often did. I saw him in the comments a few times, and he started fighting with some Star Trek fans, and he swore at them and told them to F off. And that started his downfall. They used that to get rid of him and to oust him and push him out of the film. And then we got Star Trek Beyond, which some people still think is the best of the Star Trek films because it resembles Star Trek, an episode of Star Trek the most. But ultimately, it starts off saying that space is empty and boring, and they destroy the Enterprise, and they seem to suggest that the only time humans are alive is when they're fighting a villain, and it's just a horrible example of it's not Star Trek. It's just So that's what we got out of Kurtzman, and then Kurtzman took over Discovery, and they repackaged him as the creator of Star Trek and the overseer of Star Trek, and not a Star Wars fan and non-Star Trek fan who hated Star Trek and was just there to make sure that the Star Trek guy didn't go crazy and actually make a Star Trek film that Star Trek fans would love. So what happened to Orci? I always wondered this. I even did a video saying, whatever happened to Robert Orci. What happened, apparently, allegedly, supposedly, what I've heard, is that he descended into alcoholism, and after being kicked off Star Trek, and he only managed to work on one other project for one smaller studio or streaming service or whatever it was. And unfortunately, allegedly, while he was struggling with his alcoholism, he was physically abused by his wife, emotionally abused by his wife, and also financially abused by his wife. She used his vulnerabilities and his compromised state through his alcoholism to steal money from him and abuse him even further. And he sued her in court, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but all this came out, and then she accused him of course, sexual assault, because any woman who's challenged like that, that's what they do, because, you know, that's how they're going to try and discredit the male they're dealing with, and it usually does. So apparently, I guess he was just quietly cancelled for that, and we never heard from him again, and now he's dead. So it's a sad footnote in Star Trek history, and it's interesting, if you were there before, to be aware of the revisionism that happened when Discovery was released, and they were trying to hide all this sort of stuff and act like the new show was all pure Star Trek and it was all the same copyright and all the same universe and everything, and when it wasn't, and they admitted that back in the day. And it's written by a non-fan who hated Star Trek, when back in the day he was just there as part of a team to counter the non-Star Trek and Star Trek fans and try and get them all watching the film. So, yeah, R.I.P. Robert Orci.